This is a presentation of BSRN, Box Studios Radio Network. The Power Play Post Show is on the air, covering minor league hockey since 2003, and now covering the Binghamton Black Bears with news, reactions, and in-depth interviews only heard here. And now from the Box Studios in Kirkwood, New York, here is your host of the Power Play Post Show, Bob Howard.
And hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Power Play Post Show. This is the show for January 9th, 2025. This is season 14, episode number 34. This is also episode number 473 in the long-running podcast that is the Power Play Post Show. Hello, everyone. I am Bob Howard. Thank you very much for joining me here. We are going into our second weekend of January, and the Black Bears are going into their second weekend trip to Michigan. Last weekend, they obviously played 2 games in Port Huron. This weekend, they're going to play 2 more games in Motor City in Fraser, Michigan. So that is what's on tap for the Black Bears. And then the Black Bears will be home for a couple games and potentially a 3-3 that we'll talk about in just a little bit, even though I don't think there's many people in the organization that know they're going to be playing a 3-3 the weekend after the Motor City trip. So that'll be very interesting. A lot of stuff happening in the world of the Fed over this past couple weeks. I really do think that with a lot of changes happening, I think some are good. I'm not sure if some are the best. We will talk about some of those things in our little news and notes segment that we're going to do here on this episode of the Power Play Post Show. I do want to mention that out of the all the podcasts that are covering the Fed right now, there isn't that many that are independently done. I have a close relationship, obviously, with the Binghamton Black Bears. They give me a lot of players to come on the show and to talk about their stories and their careers. And all the other real podcasts or video blogs or whatever you want to call them are mostly done by the teams themselves. Like, Mississippi has one and a couple other teams have them as well. But there's not a lot of independently run podcasts. Obviously, Gary Ryan, who will be on today's show, he obviously does all of his coverage, and he does the Facebook Lives, and he does the YouTubes and things of that nature. But for the most part, there isn't a lot of podcasts that are run like the Power Play Post Show is. It doesn't appear like the 10-Minute Misconduct is doing them this year. The hosts have gotten really busy. There's the other one there, Bench Minor Hockey. They haven't done any ever since the new ownership took over that property as well. So it is very interesting that the Power Play Post Show is about the only one that's out there consistently doing stuff on a regular basis, covering at least one of the teams or covering other things in the Fed. And, I want to thank MJ Merkel for coming on because, this year that he's been one of the first guys to come on from another show. Justin Barr has agreed to come on. We're going to talk to him probably within the next week or so. He's going to figure out what's happening in his career and how it relates to the Mississippi Seawolves after being let go. Now, there was a planned release of him a couple weeks ago during the Christmas holiday, but then he was brought back and then he was released again. And I think the second release was a little bit more of a shock. Then he and Richard Parent had another conversation. I believe it was yesterday, as I'm recording this here on Wednesday. They talked on Tuesday to try to figure out a way to best not, basically rock the boat, so to speak, down there in Mississippi. A lot of fans were unhappy. I think Justin was unhappy about him being released last Friday. So, we'll get him on the show, which will be pretty cool. There are other people. I know I've been talking a little bit with Brett Wiseman about having a couple different possible players come on from the Blue Ridge Bobcats. I'd like to do that. Maybe get Nick Stuckless back here or get him on the show. He was obviously a Binghamton Black Bear early in the season, and maybe we can get him on to talk about being a Blue Ridge Bobcat and, basically tell his story as well. So we'll certainly see. But, the Black Bears, obviously, I think really this week really probably just wanted to get guys healthy, do a little practice. I believe they're going to travel on Thursday to go out to the Michigan to play against the Motor City Rockers, who obviously one of the teams that's had a lot of shakeup, right? A lot of things have been changing. And if you just look up and down the Fed's transactions site, there's just been a lot of stuff that has been going on in the Fed. The Dashers obviously had a lot of change, right? They just changed their coach, and there's been a ton of stuff. I mean, just in the last, they dismissed AJ, they brought in Steven, Parker Rutherford, and Oscar Walgren. They're two goaltenders, they're two netminders. Now, I got to be honest with you, unless Steven's bringing in some really good goaltenders, right? I don't blame what happened with the Dashers on Oscar and Parker relatively. I mean, you just can't blame it all on the goaltenders, right? I know Motor City's had a lot of movement as well. Maybe pulled their stuff up. Just in the last 3 days, they released Brian Sommerfeld. Let's see here, Trevor Babin became active. Let's see here, Mike Wynn was placed on the IR. I believe Watertown's the other one that has had a lot of movement, right? My gosh, just since the 5th alone, there's probably like 10 transactions on here. Kyle Powell was signed. They traded for Stephen Klink, which completed an earlier trade for Chatwin Blacksmith, right? So Michael Mercurio was traded to the Zydeco. So much change. If you look at basically, I think it's like Trevor Lord and like two other guys that have been there since the beginning of the season. It's probably more than just two of those guys, but it just feels like that, right? Mateo de Blasio was released. Boyko was released. So a lot of crazy things. Justin Smith was suspended for slamming his stick up against the boards in Mississippi, but that's no big deal. He'll be back, obviously, for the Saturday game. Just so many things has happened, and it's kind of crazy because I was talking with Brant Sherwood, kind of like I was on Tuesday. I gave him a call, and we were kind of talking about the Kyle Powell situation. And we just, he kind of made reference to something that I've made reference to, which is realistically the Binghamton Black Bears roster doesn't really change that much, right? There's, when you look through the weeks and the months, there's not a lot of transaction movements. There's the let's extend his 4-game PTOs. There's, you have someone go on the IR, you have somebody come off the IR. But there's not a lot of releases, and there's not a lot of signing of people, right? And that's the interesting thing. And you find in some cases where Columbus and Carolina, year after year, they go through the same thing. They're not on the transactions that often. And why is that? Well, it's because, that consistency of the roster helps make them successful. And they don't have guys coming in and out, right? Wolves, Venom, Dashers, Motor City, the Seawolves, with all the stuff that happened with the Seawolves in the past weekend, right? You just have all these guys that essentially, and you have the Zydeco on there, you have the River Dragons on there, and you have the Black Bears on there, but it's a couple guys, and they're not on there that often, right? And I find that very interesting, and I think Brant Sherwood sees the value in not having his roster change too much, right? It's probably part of the reason why we see guys like Jesse Anderson and Tyson Kirkby and Austin Thompson hitting these milestones, right, in their careers or in Binghamton hockey history, is because there isn't that fluctuation in the roster in Binghamton. Now, who knows? In a couple years, when Brant Sherwood has moved on, he's coaching in the SPHL and ECHL, who knows? We might have a coach that comes in that every other weekend wants to change stuff, right? I think Brant always wants to get better, but he realizes he's got a good group of guys now that continue to progress and get better 2-3 years into their time here with Binghamton. So I just wanted to kind of talk about that for a few seconds, that the stability of a roster really does help make a difference. And this is a problem that I think has plagued a lot of head coaches in all sports over the past 20 to 25 years in all levels, where coaches get a year. They get 1 year as a head coach. And if they're not successful in that 18 games as an NFL coach or, 82 games as an NHL coach, they're gone. They're gone, and they don't get the time needed to kind of create something. You almost have to win almost immediately. Like Coach Sherwood came in, he had a half a year, he made some changes. I think he pissed off some fans and some players and some people with the changes that he made. But then immediately that first full year, he wins a championship, right? That gives him some grace. It gives him some latitude. And, Andreas is probably looking at it and going, well, if he keeps his ass out of trouble and doesn't get suspended and costs me a ton of money when it comes to fines, I'll keep him as long as he wants to stay here, right? So he's welcome here. But coaches don't get that freedom that often. That's why you saw AJ get fired, because they were 1-19, right? And you just don't have the time. And AJ probably doesn't have the same resources as Brant Sherwood has. So you have to think about that for a second, right? What does that mean? Well, he's got, Brant's got the networking of a lot of coaches that he can just call up and go, hey, how's this kid doing at Morrisville State? How's this kid doing here? How's this kid doing here? And he can bring people in. Brant has played at the SPHL and the ECHL level, and he can just call up certain guys that he used to know, have them come in to help out the team. I mean, think about it with Don Oliveri and Jesse Anderson. These are guys that he brought in because of his relationships outside of Binghamton, outside of being a head coach of Binghamton. He had these relationships, right? He's built relationships with college coaches and juniors coaches to bring people in. Andrew Utero was one of those guys. He was able to kind of bring in for that very purpose and that very reason. AJ may not have that. He may not have had that in Danville. He didn't have the money and the resources to do that. That's where the haves in this league and the have-nots kind of separate. And it's very interesting to me when you see coaches at any level. They either get a chance to succeed, and they do, like Brant did, or they don't. And they don't succeed, and they move on. Even Watertown, they've had a couple different coaches, right? Mississippi's had probably more coaches than Binghamton's had coaches in the last 10 years of being in pro hockey. That's sad. If you think about it, literally Mississippi, the Seawolves, in the last 2 seasons have probably had more coaches named as their head coach as Binghamton's had head coaches in the last 10 years of pro hockey. Now, I might be over-exaggerating a little bit, but think about that for a second, right? Some people just don't get the chances. And I think Brant has been given that chance here in Binghamton, and it's paid off. And his second full season, right? Because he's been here for 3 years now, right? Half a season, the first year he was here. And then last season's a full season. This year's a full season. It's going to be a full season. And he's going to go down and have a decent record after 2.5 years. Heck, he's going to have more wins in 2.5 years at 56 game seasons than a lot of head coaches that have been, here in Binghamton. Because, of course, the Devils, they were good 1 year, not successful the other 2 years. And in 15 years, this is a crazy stat, but I'll never forget the stat. In 15 years of the Senators being here, we made the playoffs 6 times. That's it. 9 out of the 15 years, they didn't make the playoffs, right? And, some coaches, it was a 1 year in Denver. And that's the kind of the funny thing about it. So we're seeing a lot of changes in the Fed, and part of it is because, either an ownership group has struggles and they make a ton of changes. Literally Watertown will be different at the end of the season, and maybe 2 or 3 guys you'll recognize from the opening night roster, which is interesting, right? Danville is going to look completely different. Mississippi could look different by the end of the season as well as when they started. And the resources are not there. And let me tell you right now, you have MJ Merkel trying to run a team that doesn't have a home. And we're into the second week of January. They still haven't made any announcements of where these guys are officially playing, even though we all know it's McCann Arena in Poughkeepsie, right? We know that they're practicing there, but there's been no announcement, and yet the league is already talking about Topeka, Kansas. It's crazy. It's crazy. And, of course, I'm pretty sure that the Topeka, Kansas thing is still a Barry Soskin adventure. So we'll see, But I guess Barry needs to make money in certain cities to obviously pay for the other cities that he has. So let's get right into this. The Power Play Post Show is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, YouTube, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Just search Power Play Post Show on whichever platform you listen to your podcast, and please subscribe. Please join the Power Play Post Show Facebook group. Just go to Facebook and search Power Play Post Show. Check out binghamtonhockey.net for all your Binghamton hockey information and curiosity. And on this edition of the Power Play Post Show, our friend Gary Ryan from the Fed League Flash, which we'll talk about more news and notes coming up. All right. So again, as I kind of talked about in my opening, the Black Bears travel to Fraser, Michigan to play the Motor City Rockers for 2 games, Friday and Saturday night. Now, this is their second trip to Michigan in 2 weeks, within 2 weeks at the same time. This is the second game of the season between the Rockers and the Black Bears. So it'll be the second and the third game of the season between the Rockers and the Black Bears. The Black Bears won the first meeting this season, which was played in Binghamton on December 21st, 2024, by the score of 4-2. Black Bears got the first goal of the game from Scott Ramakers in the first period at the 8:39 mark before Rockers. Matthias Tellstrom, best name in hockey, at least in the Fed right now, scored at the 12:19 mark to tie the game up. In the second, by the way, if anybody from the Rockers wants to have Matthias call in to do an interview, I would so be on board with that, just so I can talk to Matthias Tellstrom. I would just be like, I was talking with a hockey player named Matthias Tellstrom, and people will think I'm the coolest guy in the world. So I would definitely go for that. In the second period, in this game on December 21st, Binghamton got the lone goal from Dan Weber, his first of the season at the 14:28 mark. In the third period, the Black Bears took a 4-1 lead after goals from Gavin Yates at 1:19 and into the third, and Tyson Kirkby at the 14:27 mark. Now, Avery Smith scored for the Rockers with 3:34 left to go, but the Black Bears held on for a 4-2 win. Scotty did get a goal of the game and fought in the third period against Sartorius Karagoragis as well. The Black Bears are 21-4-1 with 60 points, first in the Empire, while the Rockers are 11-13-1 for 31 points and fifth in the division. Now, I personally think that the Rockers, might have a better record than they did if there was a little bit more consistent. This is an organization that is 100% completely different than they were, right? First of all, Trevor Babin didn't play the whole part of the season. And even though we kind of joke with the Black Bears, players and coaches about whether or not Trevor Babin is good, not good, he's a guy that can help a team get wins. And he's been in and out of the lineup all part of this first part of the season for various different reasons, right? And I just think that they could have a better record if they didn't go through. I mean, listen, they had, before the season started, the radio play-by-play broadcaster, Ben, he's gone, right? Scott Brand's there for the first, 6-7 weeks. He's then gone. There's so much off-ice stuff. Then they get sold, so a lot of changes. And that has to affect a team, right? One of the best things about the Black Bears, we can talk about this, there hasn't been that much change in the back office of the Black Bears. Some of the guys that are back there have been there since season 1. And that makes a difference, okay? Binghamton's power play is second best in the league, scoring a league-high 36 power play goals for 26% conversion rate. The Rockers are 9th in the league and have scored 17 man-up goals for a 20% conversion rate. Now, that means that the Rockers are going against one of the best penalty kills in the FPHL. The Black Bears penalty kill has been on fire, allowing only 15 goals against for an 89% kill rate. It's second best in the league, only to Carolina, who's been good all the way since the beginning of the season. Binghamton's penalty kill wasn't the best the first 6 or 7 games, right? 5-6 games, right around there. Then they just got super stingy. And I don't think that they've given up more than 3 power play goals in the last, I would say, 16 games, maybe 15 games, okay? That's how good the Black Bears power play has been, our penalty kill has been. The Rockers kill penalties at an 82% kill rate, which is 7th best in the league, and they have allowed 18 power play goals. I think that's going to go up. I think the Black Bears, if the Rockers get into trouble, I think the Black Bears could probably score maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 over the weekend against the Rockers. The Black Bears have scored 9 shorthanded goals this season, which already ties their season high for the past 2 seasons. The past 2 seasons, they've scored 9 shorthanded goals in the regular season. They've also got 1 in the playoffs for both of the last 2 seasons. But they have 9 shorthanded goals. That means they still got 2.5 months, 3 months worth of hockey to score more shorthanded goals. This team could have, and I probably am conservative here by saying they could have 15 shorthanded goals by the end of the season, which I think would be crazy, right? If they scored 2 more shorthanded goals in February, 2 in March, maybe 1 more in January, 1 in April, they could have 15 shorthanded goals. Right now, it's the best in the league, only giving up 4 shorthanded goals, and Motor City has scored 4 shorties and given up 5. So you got to watch out for the Black Bears when they're on the penalty kill. They have a couple guys that just have the right instincts to go at the right time to go for a shorthanded chance. Tyson Kirkby, Austin Thompson, and Dakota Bond definitely have the mindset to go for that. I'm keeping track of that, and that is something that those 3 guys are, without a doubt, have the ability to go and score shorthanded. All right, who to watch out for the Rockers? Eli Rivers has scored 14 goals and 13 assists for 27 points in 25 games. He's having a great rookie campaign. TJ Sneath, 12 goals, 9 assists for 21 points, is always someone to watch out for on the ice. And defenseman Josh Colton, who also has 5 goals and 9 assists. They don't have a lot of goals scored. The Black Bears and the Rockers differ completely in goals scored and allowed categories. The Black Bears have scored a league high 122 goals, and nobody's really close to them. I mean, they're like 25 to 30 goals ahead of their next closest competitor when it comes to goals scored. And they have allowed 72 goals, which is about middle of the category right there, while the Rockers have only scored 78 goals and allowed 98. Whether the Black Bears play Connor or Eggy or the Rockers play Ricardo or Trevor Babin, I think the net minding will be good at either end. And will the Black Bears, if given the chance, get under the skin of the Dark Knight, Trevor Babin? And I just want to say that I think the real questions really comes down here is, do the Rockers get in penalty trouble? And if so, Black Bears will score power play goals. Right? That's obviously important. Will the Black Bears have a full roster? We'll talk about that in just a few seconds, right? Because I think that's going to be important. I think that was part of the downfall on Saturday night's game. They just didn't have enough manpower. And, so, in the third period, you just get out there and you're tired. I'm sorry, but when you're double shifting, when maybe shifts are going an extra 30 seconds, 45 seconds than they're normal, guys just get tired. And I think it just allowed for the Prowlers to be able to, with a more of a full roster, be able to kind of beat and win some of the battles. Now, the Black Bears still score 6 goals, so it's kind of like, what are you going to do about that? But the Black Bears roster changes and updates. So let's take a look at the transaction board for, let's say for the last 7 days, right? First of all, Zach Sirota, he went inactive because he went to go play for the Quad City team up in the SPHL. And then, so the Black Bears had brought in Mike Henrique, and they released him on waivers also on the 2nd. But then he placed on January 2nd, Donald Oliveri on the 15-day IR. Now, I can tell you for a fact, regardless of what people might think, Donald Oliveri is playing sore. He is not 100%. And he needed this break. So this road trip came at the right time for Don Oliveri, right? To let him rest up some so he can get through the rest of the season. So this wasn't just a, hey, we need to put him on the IR because of a roster situation. No, this was, he really needs to be on the IR to get some rest, okay? On the 6th, Zach Sirota came back, so he was up there for the weekend while they were in Port Huron. And then Cameron Clark was placed on the 15-day IR. I think they thought he was going to come back this weekend. And I think it's just a smart move to put him on there and go that route. Now, they did bring in a gentleman named Dale Dion, and we'll talk about him in just a few minutes. They signed him to a 4-game PTO. And then Emerson Emery was actually signed today to what looks like a standard SPC. Now, tomorrow, I think on Thursday at some point, you're probably going to see an article of mine up onto the Facebook page, just looking at the roster and who signed to what and where does the Black Bears stand with their 4-game PTOs. They're getting close to have used them up. Now, the way I look at it is just all the rules continue to be broken in the FPHL when it comes to the rosters, or new rules are coming to light that we didn't know about before. Like, I guess if you have a 4-game PTO for a player and he's played 114 games up in the AHL, it's okay. It doesn't count against the cap. And salary doesn't matter either. You could sign a guy and pay him $1,000 while he's on a 4-game PTO if you wanted to, because it does not affect the salary cap. That's according to what I just read today. So that's very, very interesting. All right. So let's talk a little bit about Black Bears signed Dale Dion to a 4-game PTO. Dion has played 52 games in his career in the Fed with 9 goals and 34 assists for 43 points. Now, he played with the Elmira Foresters, the Delaware Thunder, and this year with the Monroe Moccasins. Played 5 games with the Moccasins earlier in December. In the SPHL, he's played 191 games. So this is a guy with 243 games played. So he's got some experience. This is a good thing. He has 14 goals, 48 assists for 62 points in the SPHL. He is a defenseman, don't forget, guys. He has played for Huntsville, Evansville, Peoria for the last 2.5 seasons, and with Pensacola. Okay? So Coach Sherwood said he has a great resume, which I agree 100%. And if things go this weekend, he could stick around. So this might be a guy to help bolster our defense. Obviously, Dan Weber is injured. I don't know if Dan Weber is going to make it to maybe he doesn't make it this weekend, and maybe he doesn't even go to Mississippi, right? Because if Dale Dion comes in and he works out and he plays well, I think you might see Dan Weber go on the IR. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm going to try to find out more information tomorrow. I'm going to try to find out if he's even on the trip, right? Because if he's not on the trip, then that tells me that the injury is a little bit more severe than what we probably thought. Okay, so Dion will meet up with the Black Bears in Fraser, Michigan, ahead of the team playing on Friday. So he has not practiced with the team. He will meet up with the team once they get into Fraser, Michigan. And then I would imagine there's going to be a pregame skate of some sort on Friday. If they're there tomorrow on Thursday, I would imagine they'll get a pregame skate in on Friday, and that's probably when Dion will be placed into the lineup. And I would say, just like with Dan Weber was skating with one of the true rookies. I would imagine Dion would do the same as well. And it sounds like to me, even though he can move the puck and he's gotten some sort of points both in the Fed, I think he's more of a stay-at-home type of guy and probably pinches when he can. All right, so let's talk about some news and notes from around the Empire Division. We're going to be talking to Gary Ryan from the Fed League Flash, so I thought it was kind of just appropriate to kind of bring up some news and notes from around the league. And wow, I've actually gone over 30 minutes here in my opening segment. All right, so let's talk about this. Motor City has been sold to the Bearcat Hockey Club. Initially announced a new branding for the team that would debut in the last game of the season. However, they quickly reversed that after fans backlashed on social media, and the Rockers logo and colors will stay. Okay, Mike McCollum, co-owner of the Bearcat Hockey Club, expressed his enthusiasm about the acquisition, stating, "The purchase of the Motor City Rockers represents the next significant step for Bearcat Hockey Club brand as we continue to expand our offering of hockey experiences from the fundamental mites level, all right, all the way through the professional ranks. This acquisition underscores our commitment to fostering excellence in hockey and providing our fans with an enhanced and diverse sporting experience." So basically this Bearcat Hockey Club, this group apparently is involved with a lot of Michigan hockey from the mites level and now through single A professional hockey. So it'll be very interesting to see. And I understand initially when they came out and said, we're going to have some rebranding, and boom, you're going to get it in the last game of this season. And then the fans went ballistic, right? It'd be like saying, hey, we're no longer the Black Bears. We're now going to be, the Cheetahs at the end of the season. And everyone's like, wait a second here. What? Why? The Rockers logo is great. The colors are great. It's perfect for Michigan. The purple is perfect because you have, obviously, Prince was from Minnesota, I think, or Michigan, or one of the two. No, he's from Michigan, if I remember correctly. Either way, you got the purple there. You've got the Rockers logo, Detroit Rock City. It just made sense. It's just a great logo. It's a great minor league logo, and it'd be sad to see that go. Although I understand this group of people wanting to put their spin on it, right? Because they want that brand to kind of also fit their brand and what they provide. And if they have the money to run the team, that's really what is the important thing here. So that's the Rockers. I hope that means they're here next year, that these people have enough money, enough capital to run a team next year, and I hope that works out. And I hope that somehow somebody can find a way to get that fan base from 1,000 on average, maybe up to 1,500. I think that would be a good thing. And hopefully, they can learn from what teams like Binghamton did. I mean, Binghamton started off with 3,000 fans, and now they've gotten up to 4,000 fans in just a few years, right? So it can be done. You just have to do it the right way. All right, the Dashers hockey team announced an immediate coaching change. This just happened this week. Parting ways with AJ Tesoro after a challenging start to the season with a 119-3-0 record in the Empire Division of the Federal Prospects Hockey League. In an effort to turn the team's fortunes around, ownership has appointed Stefan Esso as the new head coach. Steven joins the Dashers after a brief tenure with the Watertown Wolves in the 2022-2023 Federal Prospects Hockey League season that saw the Wolves make the playoffs. Now, this is a complete change. There's been a lot of changes on the roster. We'll see if this helps. If he can find a way in the next couple of weeks to get a few wins or a couple wins with the Dashers, that'll be good. They've lost a lot of games in the last 5 to 10 minutes of games. And that's the worst way to do it. I mean, history will always look at you in two different ways, right? When you're the Binghamton Whalers in 89 to 90 and you lost the most games in the AHL in one season, but then 37 of those was by one goal, that's how sometimes people are going to look at it. But then some people are going to just look at it and say, no, they lost all those games. It doesn't really matter anyways. But there are some people that will go, yeah, but, man, they lost by one goal in 37 of those games. So it'll be very interesting. Now, the Watertown Wolves, as you know, folks, had a huge shakeup a couple weeks ago as well. They let go Charlie Pence Jr., and the roster has been shooken up a lot as well. And it leads us to one of the bigger pieces of news that happened just recently. The Watertown Wolves, now we'll go through some of their roster changes and get to the point that I wanted to make. Okay. The Watertown Wolves sent forward Michael Mercurio to the Baton Rouge Zydeco for future considerations. Mercurio will definitely help contribute to an offense that has been missing Elijah Wilson, who's in the SP. By the way, I surfed through the Fed League Flash's Gary Ryan's Facebook page to give you some of this information here. All right, the Watertown Wolves have received Stephen Klink from the Columbus River Dragons to complete a trade that sent Chatwin Blacksmith to Georgia. Speaking of Blacksmith, he's returned to Columbus after a stint in the ESP and signed a standard contract. And then the bit of news that came out yesterday now is a former Power Play post-show guest, Kyle Powell, returns to the Fed and a familiar team, signing an SPC, standard players contract, with the Watertown Wolves. Why is that really big news? Well, first of all, it's a 4-time defenseman of the year returning back to the Fed. He hasn't played, but he was also indefinitely suspended. Now, he was a part of the Venoms roster, and then he was indefinitely suspended. We do not know, and the league has not expressed how this has happened, and I doubt if they're going to, because they break rules the way they want to. The executive board and I guess some of the owners just do this. I don't know. I don't think Andreas knows how this has been done. I believe that he said in a Facebook comment, he doesn't know how this happened, but Kyle was a part of the Venoms roster, and now he's signing with the Watertown Wolves, but he did not sign or do anything by November 31st, and now he's on this team. There's been no explanation to the fans. Nobody knows how this was allowed to happen, and the question now remains, well, if Connor Smith decides in February 1st that he wants to come play for the Binghamton Black Bears, can he do that, being that Kyle Powell was allowed to do this? Can Andrew Logar go play for the, Motor City Rockers now? Because he did not sign with the Binghamton Black Bears, was indefinitely suspended by the league, but then decides that he wants to go play for the Rockers. Can he do that? Is this going to be allowed? It'll be very interesting. Okay, here's something else that is very interesting, folks, that we just don't understand. The Black Bears to play on January 19th. Is this happening or not? The Venoms say this game is on. I have asked MJ Merkel, and he said yes. January 19th, the Binghamton Black Bears and the Venom Hockey Club will be playing at the McCann Arena in Poughkeepsie on January 19th. The game time is set right now for 6 p.m. However, when I brought this up to Coach Sherwood, he knew nothing about this game. There was no communication to the team about this. I asked Brooks Hill about this. He didn't know about this game. I believe that, let's see here, I brought this up on Tuesday to Coach. I brought this up to Brooks, and talked to him just through a couple texts on Wednesday. He said that the team doesn't know about it. So at this point, what we're talking about as it being, let's see here, January 8th right now, as I'm recording this here on Wednesday evening, the Black Bears in 11 days are going to be playing a game they didn't even know that they were going to be playing. This is the makeup game from December 27th, which is game number 146. If you go to the Fed website, you can see that the Black Bears are slated to play January 19th in Poughkeepsie at the McCann Ice Arena. However, the Black Bears didn't know about this. And what this does, folks, is this weekend, obviously the Black Bears are playing the Motor City Rockers, right? They come back, and then on January 17th and 18th at home, they will be playing against the Wolves. Okay, cool, right? And that's good. But then the Black Bears are supposed to play then on the 19th in Poughkeepsie, which they didn't know about. That's 3 games and 3 nights. Then they turn around and play another 3 games and 3 nights in Biloxi, Mississippi, which they fly out on Thursday, which gives them maybe a Tuesday, Wednesday ability to practice for those games, because Sunday they're going to be playing, and then Monday they would be off. So this is definitely one of those situations, and because I think what Brant was probably going to do is just give the team off on Sunday and then practice Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then fly out to Biloxi, Mississippi. So this changes a lot of things for the Black Bears. This is going to be a tough schedule for them if this game on the 19th is going to be played. But I wanted to bring that up because I don't think a lot of fans knew about it. I've been kind of talking about it, and I brought it up on the Facebook group. I don't think anyone's paying attention. But this game is basically slated, and MJ Merkel says this is the date that game is going to be made up on. So it'll be interesting to see what really does happen there. It does appear that the league is making changes to the schedule and not telling teams about it. And I guess media has to tell them. I don't know. It's very interesting. All right. So coming up next here on the Power Play Post Show is our friend Gary Ryan from the Fed League Flash. We'll be right back right after this, right here on the Power Play Post Show.
You're listening to the Power Play Post Show. Here is another Power Play Post Show interview exclusive with Bob Howard.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Power Play Post Show. I am very happy to always get to talk to this gentleman. He is somebody that I think I haven't gone a day in the last year without messaging, talking, having some sort of interaction with. And if I've missed a day or if he's missed a day, it's kind of weird, probably to both of us. And I know I'm really setting up for a really strange bromance here, but he is from the Fed League Flash. He is Gary Ryan. Gary, welcome to the show. By the way, this is a safe place. This is not the unfiltered, uncensored, whatever. I'm not going to kill you on rage quitting or anything like that. Although I actually thought it was funny because I think, and we'll just start with this. Welcome back to the show, first of all. Thank you very much for coming in. let's talk about Mississippi first, right? And the only reason why, because I know Motor City is probably a bigger story, but let's talk about Mississippi first, because when I read what you said, and I've actually thought the same thing sometimes in games, sometimes players get so frustrated with the game, they'll do something that gets them kicked out of the game. It's like it's like they rage quitted, right? Now, I know that other people took it as, oh, they're quitting on the team and so on and so forth because of when you said that and everything. But to me, it was like, oh, no, they kind of quit on that particular game. Like, I've seen guys get a game misconduct just to get thrown out of the game because they just don't want to deal with the crap anymore, whether it be the referees, how bad they're playing, or whatever. And I didn't take it the way other people took when you said rage quitting.
No, what I meant, and, of course, the problem with writing things instead of speaking them is there's a lot of interpretation that kind of gets wedged in there, and people think that you meant such and such when, no, that's not what I meant. But, that's just part of communication via social media.
Sure.
It's as I looked at the situation, now Mississippi felt like they were getting a bum deal from the officials.
Sure.
There were several points throughout the first 30 minutes of the game where it was just like a call where John Clement would say, he didn't say what the heck, but he kind of hinted at that as like, and another call. As the game wore on, the players were getting more and more frustrated, and it's almost like they just decided collectively, the group that ended up really kind of reacting and acting out. And so, you know what, this game's done. Let's just make a statement.
Yeah.
Let's just express our displeasure, and that's it.
It was
just kind of a settling.
The Black Bears have gone through this as well with games where in some cases it gets so out of control. We've seen this. It's not like Mississippi is the only team to go through this, right? The Black Bears and the Prowlers had what was it? The Black Bears and the Prowlers, or it was the Black Bears and somebody this season had 10-minute misconducts, and it got to the point where people were just getting these 10 minutes, and it's frustrating. Again, fans are frustrated by it, but think about the players. No one is more frustrated with that type of game than the players. Yeah,
exactly. And I can see the point. I can see Mississippi's point.
Sure.
It's just it was, if you look at the sheet even before the big lash out, even before the big reaction, the penalties were decidedly going against Mississippi. I think it was 3-1 in calls. Watertown get the 1 and Mississippi get the 3. So I understand that they were frustrated and felt like they were being handed a raw deal.
Yeah. Can I just say that I don't understand completely 100% what's going on in Mississippi or in Danville. I think Danville I know a little bit more because I've witnessed some of the games that Danville has played. And of course, they have – I think, honestly, and Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're a Binghamton fan and you remember the 89-90 Whaler season, they didn't just lose the most games in AHL history or have the worst record in AHL history. They probably also lost the most games by 1 goal, right?
37 games out of 60.
Right.
37 was 1 goal.
1 goal. And Danville, maybe it's not going to be the same, and maybe it's not as close as that. But Danville seems to keep finding a way to be in it, but not win it, right? And that's the key there. I don't know what's going on in Mississippi. So what went wrong that eventually, boom, Justin Barr is out of the scenario, and he's reaching out to me to say, hey, can I come on the show? And I would love to tell his story, and I think it's still going to happen. I spoke to Justin today about still coming on the show. It's just not going to be immediate because he wants to see what Mississippi is going to say first, and some sort of podcast that's going to be released. I don't really know much about it. And I told him, I said, listen, I want to interview you. I want to tell your story. I don't necessarily want to be the mouthpiece for Justin Barr. And he completely understood that. But what is going on in Mississippi that so much had changed? Because he's probably one of the most respected guys in the league. He's a first responder, and I'm sorry, but I my hats always go off to people who run towards fire or danger, or police officers, all those people. When they do that, I know he's a firefighter and EMT. So what is going on in Mississippi that led to all this craziness?
The problems in Mississippi have been going on since February of last year, and they never have gotten fixed. And I'm not going to mention any specific people because I think it's just the whole team. But everybody is in it for themselves, and they're not in it for the team.
Okay.
The big difference between Mississippi and the Dashers right now is the Dashers, they've been struggling. They've been losing. Mm-hmm. But the team was all on the same page, and I won't get into that yet because I know we'll talk about that later. Mm-hmm. But, they were all together. They were in it, win, lose, or draw. They were a unit. Mississippi, it's more of, I feel that we should be doing such and such. No, I feel we should be doing this instead. No, I feel we should be. And all this infighting has just, it has never curtailed since the bottom dropped out last February with the Lariaco situation.
Now, so you're talking about leadership on the ice. Are you talking about maybe how Justin helped run the team as the captain?
I'm talking about leadership off the ice.
Off the ice. So this is not about the players on the ice. This is more about off ice, which sometimes those kind of disruptions can really affect the way a team plays on the ice, right?
Exactly. Okay. When you look at the roster, just on paper, when you look at Mississippi's roster, there's obvious talent.
Sure.
Just on paper, I look at them and say, there's no reason why these guys can't be scoring 4 or 5 goals every night, and it just doesn't happen because they're not synced up with each other. The same problem existed in Delaware.
Sure.
And that's really why Delaware struggled, because there was all the infighting and the cliques and the differences of opinion and the differences in philosophies, and the team just could not get together to play a cohesive game together as a unit. And I see that happening in Mississippi.
Do you think it was a good move to remove Justin Barr, or no?
I don't know.
Okay.
I honestly
that's fair. That's a fair
know.
answer.
Yeah. All I know is from what I see and hear on social media is
sure.
that Justin Barr is the rock star, and I think deservedly so because he helped bring the team there in the first place.
Yeah.
And so everybody just. The fans just look at him as, well, he should be the leader. And I don't know if it's a matter of he wasn't allowed to lead,
sure,
or if he fell into the trap of differences of opinions. I don't know.
Gary, how many coaches did they have in the last, say, 12 months?
I have to think about this here. And in the last 12 months, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
That's a problem. You're already answering the question, and that's part of the problem. If you look at Columbus, you look at Binghamton, right, and you look at the consistencies of Binghamton, Columbus, Carolina, what is the common denominator? The coach has not changed. The coach is a respected coach, right? Martinson in Athens, I know it's only been a short period of time, right? But there's a belief in the system because of the consistency of the leadership up top. So that tells a story right there. Now, I don't want to waste all of our time on Mississippi, but in Danville, we'll go to Danville, then we'll go to Motor City. We'll go to Fraser, Michigan after this, right? But in Danville today, as we're recording this on Tuesday, fans are listening to this on Thursday, they obviously let go of AJ, their head coach. And I understand. I listen, I've been around minor league hockey for a long time, very long time. I've seen this kind of thing happen before. Team does not start off the way everyone expected it. I know there's some challenges behind the scenes with the Dashers, not a lot of money, not a lot of resources to help the team. But I think a lot of the players, from what I know and have seen, absolutely loved AJ. And AJ is a very beloved person in the hockey world. And he was a former player. He was a former Dasher. And so do you think this is going to help this team? Do you think the team will get better with a new head coach?
I wish I could say yes, but I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. I think, I have been watching the Dashers very closely over the last month. I've probably followed them almost as closely as the Black Bears. They were trending in the right direction. Yeah. They were playing better. They weren't getting blown out. They weren't making as many on-ice mistakes. The mistakes were becoming fewer. It takes a long time to build a system, and AJ had a system, and the players were starting to click with it. And I tell you what, the game this last Saturday, which they lost in the final 2 minutes to Monroe, when that goal was scored on Rutherford, my heart sank. I just kind of knew that was it. And it's sad because, again, the team was so united. I mean, people don't know this, but the players and AJ were going out at nights and just hanging out together, right? And doing things together. I mean, the team had a very strong bond, and now it's been disrupted. You get a coach that I'm trying to be careful how I say this. I do not have much faith in Stephen SL. I just don't. Now you're starting over. There are players that are getting released today. They'll pop up in the transactions in the next couple of days.
Because he's going to bring in some of his own people, right?
Yes, and that was the expressed desire of management in making this decision, as they looked at SO and said, he has scouting abilities. That you basically read into that, and it's like, okay, so in other words, he wants to bring in his own people. Right. Now, SO did spend a long time in junior hockey, so maybe he has those connections that I am not aware of. Sure. I don't know. But I unfortunately, I think this was more of a panic move. We've got to represent the FPHL in Toledo in a month, and we've won one game. We've got to do something.
So let me ask you about one player on this team, and then we'll move on. Ocean Weisblatt. He's got a brother that plays in the NHL, so there's some skill there in that family, right? Is this a kid that you think he'll stay with the Dashers? Do you think he'll be moved? What do you think of him as a defenseman? Of course, he's only got one assist through 11 games on the season, but is he a kid that does have the skill to play even better hockey?
He is at home.
Oh.
he's not with the team anymore.
Okay. So that answers that question.
I don't know the details of the how and the why, but yes, he is at home.
Okay. All right. We'll move on from that. Let's talk about.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I mean, that solves that question for me, because I know he's got a brother that plays in the SP as well.
Right, yeah. Exactly. Well, his Orca is with the well, actually, I guess he's in the SP now. He with the Fed, he's been playing in Athens.
Oh, okay. But I think he's in the SP. So or maybe both of them were in the Fed recently. Either way, I find it interesting that you have one brother playing in the NHL and then two, obviously, playing down in single A hockey. But I was wondering if there's at least a remote chance that these guys got enough skill to play elsewhere. Okay, so obviously we're recording this Tuesday evening. Everybody's heard this, the news that Motor City has been purchased by Bearcat Hockey, which is still very difficult for me to say. Very much like you still keep calling him the Hudson Valley Venom, which is funny. I laugh at you every single time because I think it in my head as well. So every time I think about the Venom, I still think Hudson Valley. All right, and they're still playing in the Hudson Valley, even in Poughkeepsie is part of Hudson Valley. So essentially, you're still right, but that's not the name of the team. But Motor City being purchased by Bearcat Hockey, which has no relation to the Binghamton University Bearcats. I just want everyone to know that. A SUNY school in upstate New York does not own the Motor City Rockers, although I thought that would be pretty cool if we did.
Same colors.
Same colors. There you go. I want to say this is a good thing because I do think that, if there's somebody that's energetic about coming in, but there was something that you mentioned that is very interesting, which is, do they have the capital to run a team the rest of the year? So I want to throw this at you. They're obviously now running the team from now until the end of the 2024-25 season, right? So that's at least about half of the season that they're putting their capital into it now. So if they make it to the end of this season and we don't hear anything, smell anything, there's probably a good chance that they might be successful. The attendance has gone up a little bit in Motor City over the last couple years. So, and when you look, and this is a tail sign for fans out there, when you watch a game on television or on YouTube or whatever, and you see a lot of dasher boards, they're either lying to you or people paid for that time, that spot. It's very important. That is the moneymaker right there. On ice advertising and those dashers are very, very important. If they're blank, they're not making money.
Right.
Look at the dashers. If you see them filled up, they're either lying to you or they're making money. So your thoughts on potentially how can we look at this team at the end of the season if we don't hear any rumors that Motor City's struggling?
Well, I'm looking at it. The glass is both half empty and half full. There's pros and cons to everything.
Sure.
In the business world, but I'm looking at this and thinking, well, first of all, there's a distinctive brand there. The Rockers branding is very iconic. It really is. It's really special, and that's why when the initial announcement came out that we're going to change the branding, everybody went nuts. But fortunately, they have reneged on that and said, nope, we're keeping the purple, we're keeping the Rockers. It's all staying the same. But it's so hard to market a single A team in a city the size of Detroit, Michigan.
Sure.
And I know that the previous ownership group, they tried some stuff, and it just didn't happen. Now, with Bearcat Hockey, they have things set up all over Michigan with clinics and camps and, working with youth hockey throughout the state. So now they're going to be able to reach out a little farther just than, just Detroit. They're going to be able to go out to all parts of Michigan now and say, hey, we're associated with the Rockers. Here's a pro team in Michigan that, we want to draw you to. We want to show you. We want to sell to you. So I think that is good. That there is the tie-in with amateur and youth hockey throughout the state. I think that can only help them.
Gary, let me ask you this question. One of the things that Andreas has been very open and honest about when he came to Binghamton 3.5 years ago was he started giving away free tickets to youth hockey players, right? If you were a youth hockey player and playing in STHA, he gave you free tickets to come to the games. Well, right. What happens when you give free tickets to kids? The parents have to buy tickets more than likely to come to the games as well. I don't think he was giving free tickets to the adults who weren't playing hockey. So if a kid got a free ticket, most likely his mom or his dad had to buy a ticket to take him to the game. That's not a bad thing, right? So can they take a look at what maybe teams like Columbus and Carolina and Binghamton do to bring in consistent attendance numbers? Because, sure, Columbus is 3,100 and Carolina, Wilkes, they're at 2,990, but that's close to their maxes, right? So it's a good thing. Binghamton, 4,000. Maybe take a look at what Monroe's doing, right? And see, can those cities help with helping a city like, Fraser, Michigan, get more fans in? Can that organization reach out to them and go, hey, what are you guys doing to get fans in?
I certainly hope so. I remember back in August that Brooks Hill was amongst many people who met together to have a joint meeting of all teams' PR people and whatnot to try and figure out marketing strategies. And not that you're giving away secrets for your individual team, but you're giving general ideas to help each other out and to help the league as a whole to improve. I'm hoping that that's something that the league will make sure, hey, we've got to prioritize doing that. Let's do it twice a year. Let's have one meeting in the off season, one meeting during the season.
Right.
So that we can definitely have a positive impact on all the other clubs and what's going on in those communities.
Now, this isn't the only change that the Motor City Rockers have done this year. I mean, it seems like the whole year they've been changing things. Ben didn't come back as the broadcaster. Scott Brand was let go. There's been a lot of changes with the Rockers. Maybe new blood is a good thing. Not that I think Ben did anything wrong. Ben is a great broadcaster, listens to the show. Ben, I'm not accusing you, but those changes were happening leading up to this. Right. And so I'm kind of hoping that some consistency can happen. And like you said, maybe because there is this broad spectrum that Bearcat hockey has within the state of Michigan, that it helps build this brand in a better way. And I think it was smart because you have 1,000 fans showing up every single night. The last thing you want to do is tell 750 of them, oh, by the way, we're going to take away your logo and your colors and stuff like that. That doesn't make any sense because you're alienating that crowd when you don't know if you're going to increase the attendance there. We don't know realistically because I don't think we've ever seen it where Fraser has gotten 2,500. I don't think they've ever sold out. So that says a lot. Knowledge. Yeah, me either. So you don't want to alienate your crowd. I do want to ask you about Watertown. This has been a crazy year for the Watertown Wolves, right? They started off very, very hot, very, very good. I thought to the point where I was like, okay, this team is going to literally dominate anything that Binghamton's not dominating in the Empire Division, right? You got Binghamton still at the top, doing great. They were the first team to 50 points. No team has made 50 points yet, right?
Right.
No team's in 50 points. They've also made 60 points. And, people will say that the Empire Division is a weak division this year, possibly Danville. The Venom have not won as many games as you and I probably thought they could win, right, with all the talented, skilled players that they have. Jesso got suspended. Norika's back in Latvia because he can't get back into the country. They're working on that. I think Motor City probably, if they had Babin since the beginning of the season, maybe they'd have a few more wins that they do. But let's be honest, right? The bottom half of this division is not as good. Right. And then all of a sudden, Binghamton beat Watertown in that one game, like 9-2 or something like that.
Yeah.
And it just fell apart after that. Penn's Jr. was released, and it kind of went crazy after that. Your thoughts on that whole situation?
It was unfortunate, and I was actually looking forward to the thought of Binghamton having another team in the division that they were going to be running neck and neck with.
Sure.
Because I thought that would be an awesome. The rivalry's already there, but I thought that would help intensify the rivalry and make it even more special. But it just wasn't. It wasn't meant to be. There were a lot of behind the scenes things that I just really would rather not talk about.
Sure.
That also factored into what happened and the changes that were made. And yes, I know a lot of listeners are familiar with some of it from what they've seen and heard on social media. But the primary driving factor, it just seemed to be like it's kind of like the New York Rangers. The Rangers got off to a great start, and all of a sudden the wheels came off. And it seemed like it happened in Watertown too.
Almost at the same time, too. That's the funny part. Almost at the same time. It's like Watertown and the New York Rangers literally fell apart at the same time. And they've brought in Justin Coachman, and they brought in now Kyle Powell, as that was announced today, which is a crazy thing because he was indefinitely suspended by the team from not signing with the Venom or being released by the Venom by the end of November. That kind of changes things. But the team hasn't necessarily gotten so much worse because there have been changes since the breakdown of everything that I think are going to make Watertown be okay, and maybe they're not as going to be the high potent offense as they once were, but they still are probably going to win a bunch of games. Yeah.
I tell you, the one good thing for Watertown that came out of that weekend where they just got lit up by Binghamton is that a group of players realized at that point we are supposed to be leaders.
Yeah.
We're supposed to really lead this team, and we've maybe been a little lax in doing that. Not anymore. We are. We're getting on board with this. We're going to drive this train forward. The leaders on the team, on the ice, have stepped up, and they've become very vocal. And it's like, look, we're going to do this. We believe in ourselves. We believe in our talent. We believe in the system and in the process. We're going to be okay. And
now you're talking about guys like Trevor Lord, right? Trevor Graspy, Carter Thornton, guys like that.
Yeah. They collectively got together and they decided, no, we're not going to let this fall apart. To their credit, they had a little hiccup, sure, and they're still working through the changes. But I think that the new players that come in, we've already seen some of them come in and already have an impact. So, I think what the leaders think in that we're going to be okay, we're going to do this. I agree with them.
Yeah. I want to ask you a little bit more about the Kyle Powell situation. You and I have a lot of respect for Kyle Powell. We think he's a very respectable guy. A lot of people like him in the league. Fans love him. Some players absolutely love him. They know the kind of player he is and the kind of person he is. So I personally am like, I hate that rule, right? That you get indefinitely suspended. This is single A hockey. This is not the AHL, the ECHL. This is not the NHL. This is, these guys don't have a union that can support them and help them. They're on their own. They're what I like to call they're self-contracting players, self-contracting workers, where they have to go and negotiate with owners, and they have to do all that themselves. Yeah, some of them have agents, some of them have maybe personal managers or something like that, but it's not the same. There's not like rules set up to protect them like a union is for the AHL, some of the ECHL players, and of course the NHL players. So I kind of like the fact that somehow, some way, someone broke the rule here, brought this in, because I'm hoping that there's a change coming, because I really dislike, you've already excluded some international players because this is a not-for-profit league, which means P1 visas can't happen, which means some players have to sit on the sideline. We're looking at Norica right now with the Venom. We're looking at Nikita Ivashkin, who's not here. Josh Fletcher basically had to beg, borrow, and steal just to get into the country to play for the Binghamton Black Bears by November 31st. So I have to say, I know that there's leadership with the Wolves that maybe are leadership of the league, but hopefully enough people will make enough stink within the league to say, hey, listen, how can that happen? Now can we start doing this? Because I think it's better for the league.
Oh, yeah. That's the thing is, you have you have Kyle Powell, you have players like Josh Keplinger. Okay, Carolina, there was a whole situation there, and Athens drafted him, and Josh was just like, I'm sorry, that situation cannot work for me. It just doesn't work. I can't play for Athens. It's not that he didn't want to.
He can't.
It's just that it was just outside of the realm of possibility for him. So, you look at him and it's like, okay, now he's, indefinitely suspended. Well, he still lives in Winston-Salem. He works there. He's got a very close rapport with the fans and with the team still. Why not let him play?
Right.
The league is better with the Keplingers and the Powells and the Noricas in it. It makes for a better product.
Right. I agree. And here's the other thing that I find interesting, that I kind of agree with the league in here. I want these guys to play at least 15 games before the playoffs, right? So I totally am on board with that, right? I think players should, because then you don't want someone like Binghamton or Carolina or Columbus or Baton Rouge or not Watertown, because they don't really have the capital to do that, but to just go buy players with 5 games left to go. So I like the 15-game rule. I just hate the fact that if you're not signed with a specific team that supposedly picked you up in an expansion draft or whatever kind of draft, right? Dispersal draft. Keplinger can't go and play in Athens because he's got a life and he's got to take care of himself. These guys don't get paid enough for you to have that freedom to lock them down like that. That just, it's not fair. Exactly.
And it's really insanity.
Yeah.
As much as I love the FPHL, there are just some rules that just drive me batty. And I agree with you. This is one of them. I've got to give a shout out to the Port Huron Prowlers organization. They had a list of players that they weren't going to be able to play with Port Huron. Port Huron, instead of just holding on to their rights and forcing them into a suspension, they released all the players and said, "Okay, you're free agents.
Yeah.
If you want to go play for another team, go ahead."
Yeah, but that's...
So I thought that was awesome.
Yeah,
I thought that was an awesome move by them.
that's Matt Graham basically saying, I'm a player, I understand, I know where you're coming from, and seeing that. I mean, he's the general manager of the team, he's the head coach, he's a player, so that's a guy who just gets it, right? He gets his players, he understands the struggle for them being paid very little to do something like this. And if you want a league where you're going to pay guys little, you got to give them a little bit more freedom. You got to give them a little bit more of that decision-making process, right? If Kyle Powell wants to play the rest of his career with Watertown, regardless of what happens, if there's another expansion draft, don't sit him out. What they should do. And this is my opinion, and I think this is something that probably doesn't get talked about enough. Maybe November 31st isn't the suspension date. Maybe that's when they become a free agent date.
Yeah.
Right? You give the team that selected them a month and a half. You give them all of November. You gave them all of October, right? The season starts usually in the second week of October. You're giving them a month and a half. They can throw money. They can throw whatever they want. Listen, Kyle, we want you to come to Athens. We really want you in Athens. Or Keplinger, we want you in Athens. I can't do it. All right, we'll give you another $50 a week. No, I can't do that. All right, fine. Then on November 31st or December 1st, they become a free agent. Because the punishment for the player is, and this is where the league has to look at this, the punishment for the player is he didn't play for a month and a half. He didn't make that money for a month and a half. He didn't build his stats for a month and a half. That is enough punishment. Saying, oh, nope, you're definitely suspended for the rest of the season, that's not fair. It's just not fair. Not when you're talking about single-A hockey. Okay.
And that could have made a huge difference if instead of this huge pool of players being suspended, if they were free agents, then all of a sudden the Mississippis and the Dashers and the Venom, they all have a shot at getting some good players and improving themselves and building up parity in the league and more competition.
Yes, exactly. This is exactly the kind of points that need to be made that the league needs to hear and everything. All right, before I let you go, I got to talk to you a little bit about the Black Bears, okay?
We have to.
Obviously, they're playing against Motor City this upcoming weekend. It'll be a very interesting weekend for them. Obviously, Motor City with a new ownership group. There's a little bit of excitement maybe going into these games. The Black Bears obviously have to travel out there. They'll be going out there on Thursday and getting into town, probably trying to get themselves rested. The Black Bears are right now 21-4-1. They've got 60 points. There's some talk that the division is a little bit weaker. They have not played anybody as of yet over in the Continental. Last year, they went through the same conversation. People said, oh, the Empire's not as good as the Continental, and still the Black Bears won the championship. Are they still, right now, in your opinion, from what you see, the best team in the league?
Yes, absolutely. And the reason why I think so is not only just by what I have observed they've gone through so much more adversity this year, more injuries, more suspensions.
Sorry, Brant. We love you, but sorry.
They have gone through all that, and they have a better winning percentage this year than they had last year.
Yeah.
And not only that, but you look at the numbers. I have a gentleman who volunteered to put together a strength of schedule index every week, and I post the RPI index.
Yeah.
The Binghamton Black Bears have the second highest RPI rating of the league. Carolina being number one because of the opponent's winning percentage.
Yeah.
Because the RPI factors in your winning percentage and your opponent's winning percentage. So Binghamton, that basically proves Binghamton is winning the games they are supposed to win, and the games where they might, possibly face a struggle, they're still winning.
Yeah. It is very interesting. I want to ask you about Tyson Kirkby because he's not liked throughout the league. I think there's some players that kind of like he gets under their skin. I know there are fans that don't like him, but he has done some pretty remarkable stuff in the 4 years that he's been with the Black Bears. He's done, he scores goals. He assists. He fights when need be. When do we start talking about him being one of the better players in the FPHL? Because I don't think there's a lot of people that talk about him, and they probably should.
Well, the way I think of Kirkby, a lot of times I'll look at different Fed players, and I'll kind of do an NHL comparison. Not that they're as talented as the NHL.
Yeah, no, I got it.
They play the same kind of way. Tyson Kirkby is the Brad Marchand of the FPHL. Brad gets under your skin,
pisses people off.
He causes a lot of ruckus and mayhem, but he scores clutch goals.
Yep.
He plays in clutch situations. He produces on a regular basis. He's Brad Marchand.
But every year he's gotten better, and this year he's leading the league right now in goals, assists, and points.
Yep,
it's pretty crazy.
Yep, it is, and that just says that he is still developing his game. We look at him from 2 years ago, and we can say, that Tyson Kirkby was pretty good.
Right.
Now we see how much better he is.
Yeah.
He's continuing to evolve his game and develop his game, and he's more of an all-around player than he was a year ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah. He's got 51 points. Norika's got 34. Garrett Milan's got 34 for Athens. He's got 23 goals. Norika's got 20. The next closest after that is Austin Thompson with the Black Bears with 17. When it comes to assists, he's got 28. Dakota Bond from the Black Bears has got 26. And then Trevor Graspy from the Watertown Wolves has 25. I think he can hold on to these numbers for a good portion of this season if injuries don't get in his way.
Yeah. And here's your mind-blowing factoid of the day.
Sure.
If Kirkby continues on this pace, he will finish with 105 points.
Yeah.
That's amazing. In the Fed, you reach 100 points. That is an accomplishment.
It really is. It really is. Now, I can tell you right now, in Binghamton hockey history, 100-point seasons didn't happen that often. Not in Binghamton, right? Rod Bloomfield had 173 points. Rod Bloomfield actually had 3 of the 6, well, 3 of the 5 for the North American Hockey League for 100-point seasons. But it hasn't happened in the Fed yet. I mean, we've had Nikita and Tyler get 50 goal seasons, because that's another stat that people look at is how many times have you gotten 50 goals in a season? So yeah, I mean, that would be crazy if he did that, because that's kind of an iconic number, 100 points.
Yeah, it really is, and you figure that's 56 games, so that's almost 2 points per game.
Well, and that's what he's averaging right now. I think it's 1.9 right now. So it's pretty interesting. Connor McAnanima, I talked to Coach a little bit earlier today. I think the way he phrased it to me was Connor was pissed off. He wasn't down. He wasn't depressed about the game. Now, I look at it this way. When I talked to Coach Sherwood about this, he said that, he goes, when you look at Port Huron, he goes, sometimes they have all this skill, but they just don't know how to come together to get goals scored. He goes, but they did Saturday night. He goes, and I don't blame Connor. I don't blame our defense. I realized we were down 2 men, and then Gavin gets hurt, and he comes back in. He goes, it was just that Port Huron was able to get everything that they needed out of their goal scorers. And he said it just doesn't happen that often for them, even though it probably should, because they do have skilled people.
Yeah. And, I have all the confidence in the world that the next time Connor comes out, he's gonna have a great game. Because as a former goalie, I can tell you, just your mental attitude is what carries you through. You know, you might not be the most skilled or the most talented, but that mental fortitude is so much more important to a goalie than their physical skill is. And, I mean, the fact that Connor looked at himself honestly and said, that stunk, I can do better, I am better than this.
Yeah.
And, he's angry, he's not depressed, he's angry instead.
Says a lot.
That's why I think he's a great goaltender.
Yeah.
Is because he has a bad moment and he just he takes a second, he takes a deep breath, and puts his mind back in the game. And for the rest of the game, he's great.
Yeah.
One bad game does not define a goaltender.
No, absolutely. Okay, so why don't you do me a favor? Why don't you give me a little bit of a prediction for this weekend for the Black Bears? Is it okay to say if they get a split, that's okay?
Yes. And the reason why is because, Binghamton's got balanced scoring throughout the lineup.
Sure.
But so does Motor City.
Yeah.
Okay, they don't have a 20-goal scorer, but they have 7, 8, 9 guys who can put the puck past you. And they move the puck well. They obviously surrender way too many shots, but then you got Rico Gonzalez, who's been having just an absolutely phenomenal year this year. He's stopping almost everything he sees, so it's okay. I think Binghamton could take 2 games, but if they end up dropping one, I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't think that that's a sign of weakness for Binghamton or that things are falling apart or anything like that. Motor City is a much better team than they were the first 10, 12 games of the season.
Right. They're not. Are they as defensively sound as they were last year? Because that was one of their trademarks, was how good they were defensively. Are they as defensively sound this year, or are they just a little bit better offensively this year?
They are better offensively.
Okay.
They're better with their team balance. They rely on their goaltenders too much, kind of like the Rangers. But they do enough to get themselves in a position where if they're not winning, they still could win. They could still pull it out. They're competitive every night.
Mm-hmm. All right. Honestly, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Have fun. You watch way too many of these games. I got to be honest with you. I don't know how you do it. 4 games, sometimes in a sitting, and then you got to talk about sometimes 3 other games or 2 other games, or you watch 3 games and then kind of talk about the other 3 games. It's way too much. It'd give me a headache. I do way too much covering the Black Bears to be able to do what you do, trying to cover the whole league. It's kind of insane. I hope they don't add any more teams for a couple of years, because I don't think you'll be able. I think you'll blow up. I think there will be an explosion down in Northeast Pennsylvania, and we'll all be like, "Well, that was Gary. He's done." So,
yep.
But Gary,
it's fun. It's fun to watch all the games.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to let you know that I am rage quitting right now and ending this interview. Just so you know.
All right, I'm out of here.
Gary, thank you very much. It's the Fed League Flash. You can check it out on all the different things. It's the Fed Flash Audio Network, which is, I think, pretty cool as well. So everybody, you can check it on Speaker and Spotify and YouTube and Jim's podcasts and Frank's podcasts and all these other things, because that's what we do now, right? We have to offer it on all these different. Because one random guy will be like, "Hey, I listened to it on like MySpace podcast. Do you have it?" All right, fine, I'll get it on there too. But that's just the way it is. Gary, thank you so much.
Anderson.
Yeah. Well, it was like Frank Slack, right? You know, he listens to the show, and I love Frank. He's a character here in Binghamton. And I'm like, are you listening to the show? He goes, no, you don't have it on YouTube. I was like, really? You listen to a podcast on YouTube? He goes, yeah, I watch it. I watch the podcast. I was like, but I'm just audio. He goes, I don't care. If you put it on there, I'll listen to it. And he does. But it's just like,
That's
okay.
great.
And I had to figure that out. I didn't do that the first season. And then the second season, I had to figure that out. I had to figure that out for Frank. So there you go, Frank. Now you just added like 30 seconds to the podcast. But Gary, thank you so much for coming on as always.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back right after this, right here on the Power Play Post Show.
If you're a Binghamton hockey fan, then you need to check out binghamtonhockey.net for all your news, stats, information, the Binghamton Hockey Hall of Fame, top 10 lists, profiles, and so much more. That's binghamtonhockey.net. You're listening to the Power Play Post Show.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Power Play Post Show. Thank you very much for listening. I always appreciate it. Definitely make sure you keep an eye on the Facebook group page there, the Power Play Post Show. You can obviously go to Power Play Post Show at Facebook and join our group. That's where I provide all of the written stuff that I do for the Power Play Post Show. On game days, I start off with the game day matchup, giving you news and notes about the game stats, that kind of information. And then, of course, I give you the game day thread, which basically breaks down the games as they're happening. And then we do the final score graphic after the game is over with. And you guys can share that. If you're friends with me on Facebook, please share that graphic out there. Let's get it out there so more people know about it. And then, of course, the day after game reports happen. That morning after the games, I definitely give you all that information. So, obviously, the team's going to be traveling out to Motor City. They'll probably, a couple of them might be listening to the Power Play Post Show as they're traveling out there, which is very cool. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. The Power Play Post Show is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, YouTube, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Just search Power Play Post Show on whichever platform you listen to your podcast, and please subscribe. Please join the Power Play Post Show Facebook group. Just go to Facebook, search Power Play Post Show, and please join. Check out binghamtonhockey.net for all your Binghamton hockey information and curiosity. Thank you to Rob Lapolis, our MC, John Petitucci, our musical director, as well as Gary Ryan of the Fed League Flash. I am Bob Howard. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Power Play Post Show.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Power Play Post Show. Be sure to tune in next week to the Box Studios Radio Network for all the latest Black Bears news and interviews from around minor league hockey. The Power Play Post Show would like to thank John Patitucci for all the music you hear on the show. You've been listening to the Power Play Post Show.